It's 8 p.m. on a Sunday. Your living room is an absolute battlefield of Legos and crayons. You're exhausted, desperately counting down the hours until Monday morning when the school bus finally comes to your rescue. But imagine this. What if Monday morning never came? 10,000 years ago. No daycare, no schools, and obviously zero iPads. You're stuck with these little monsters 24/7, 365 days a year, all while just trying to survive out in the wild. How on earth did prehistoric parents pull that off without completely losing their minds? Or better yet, without schools to contain all that chaotic energy? What did ancient kids actually do all day long? For a long time, prehistoric kids were practically invisible. Everyone just kind of assumed they sat around playing in the mud, picking up rocks, and waiting for the adults to bring home dinner. A lot of this comes down to the limits of archaeology. Kids' bones are just too fragile to survive tens of thousands of years. And even when archaeologists did find the mini tools they used, they usually just mistook them for tools made for really short adults. Basically, ancient kids were completely off our radar. But throw that whole idea out the window. Welcome to the Ice Age. A 5 or 6 year old's morning didn't kick off with cartoons and a bowl of sugary cereal. Instead, they'd wake up, throw on an animal pelt, and trot right out of the cave after the adults. They weren't heading out to some perfectly baby proof playground. They were stepping straight into the brutal, chaotic construction site of everyday survival. And we don't just know this from guessing. We know it thanks to one of the most mind blowing archaeological discoveries in recent history. Out in White Sands National Park in New Mexico, scientists stumbled upon thousands of fossilized footprints pressed deep into a dried up lake bed. Expert trackers analyzed the site like detectives at a crime scene. And guess what? Most of those footprints belonged to kids. You can totally picture it. Tiny feet sprinting back and forth, slipping, stepping all over each other, running in circles. At first glance, it sounds exactly like the chaotic Saturday afternoon at the local park you usually have to sit through. But when researchers took a closer look, the story took a wild turn. Those tiny footprints didn't lead to a sandbox, they led straight to the carcass of a massive, woolly mammoth. The kids' footprints were overlapping with the adults. And right next to the carcass, dozens of tiny handprints pressed deep into the mud. These 5 and 6 year olds weren't playing hide and seek behind a tree. They were right there at a mammoth butchery site. Prehistoric parents didn't have the concept of go play over there while the adults were. There was no caution tape, no baby proofing. The kids were right in the thick of it, covered in mud, probably holding sharp pieces of stone, directly helping their parents process a meal for the entire tribe. They were folded into the daily grind the second they could walk. Their play was work, and their work, surprisingly enough, had all the fun and energy of a game. That is exactly how humanity's very first child interns spent their day. In today's high risk world, it's no wonder so many of us turn into helicopter parents. We schedule everything, micromanage their every move, and stress out trying to find the perfectly educational way to play with our kids. But what about prehistoric parents? How did they pass down mammoth butchering skills without a whiteboard or a textbook? The short answer, they didn't teach them at all. At least, not the way we define education today. There were no lectures, no hand holding, and definitely no pop quizzes. When studying hunter gatherer societies, anthropologists actually call this natural learning mechanism intent participation. The adults simply did their thing, sharpening stones, building fires, prepping food, just trying to stay alive. And the kids, they were like little sponges. They naturally observed, remembered, mimicked, and just jumped right into the work as soon as they felt ready. No nagging, bribing, or coaxing required. If the idea of hyperactive toddlers volunteering to do chores sounds like pure fantasy, check out this incredible archaeological discovery. At several sites around the world, researchers have dug up tiny, incredibly well crafted stone hand axes. At first, some scholars thought they might have belonged to some extinct race of tiny humans. Or maybe they were just religious offerings to the gods. But the truth is actually way warmer and much more practical. These were humanity's very first educational toys. Prehistoric parents actually took the time to carve these mini tools specifically to fit perfectly into their kids' tiny hands. With this toy, a toddler could sit right next to their mom, clumsily practicing how to peel a root or scrape a little scrap of animal hide. That little stone axe carries a timeless message. It proves that for prehistoric kids, work wasn't some heavy burden or child labor. Instead, work was their language of love and connection. Being handed a personal tool just like the adults was basically a VIP membership card. It let that kid hold their head high and proudly say, I'm a useful part of this family too. So, how long did this internship actually last? When did these kids officially graduate into real adults? In modern society, we've built this massive waiting room called the teenage years. From 13 to 19, we just assume it's a guaranteed phase of rebellion. Teen angst, slamming doors and rolling eyes when they are asked to take out the trash. We generally believe kids need to be shielded from the pressures of the real world until they are 18. Or maybe even until they finish college. But in the human survival playbook, that waiting room was completely empty. There was absolutely no delayed adulthood. Back in prehistoric times, being 10 or 12 wasn't about stressing over homework or trying to find yourself. That was the age you became a core essential worker. You weren't playing pretend at hunting or butchering anymore. You were literally bringing home life-saving calories for the entire tribe. If you look at communities today that still live deeply connected to nature, this rule of growing up hasn't changed one bit. The Amazon and indigenous Americas. Kids as young as 4 or 5 are already nimbly gathering nuts and picking berries. They proudly carry armfuls of freshly picked corn, doing their part to contribute to the family. The Hadza tribe, Tanzania. A 5-year-old boy isn't playing pretend war. He carries his own mini bow and quietly trails the absolute best hunters into the bush. He starts by aiming at lizards and small birds, learning through constant observation and practice. By the time he's 10 or 12, that same kid is taking down large game on his own, bringing real meat back to the camp. The Ake community, Central Africa. A 6-year-old girl isn't playing mom with plastic dolls. She's carrying her actual baby sibling on her hip for hours at a time, so her mom has free hands to work, and she doesn't stop there. She also knows how to start a fire, keep it going, and directly helps prep the food. They aren't playing make-believe. They take on real, heavy work completely naturally, skillfully, and with a ton of pride. Through the lens of a 21st century parent, watching such young kids shoulder real responsibilities might make us flinch. Our first instinct is to feel bad, thinking their childhood is being stolen from them. But for these kids, and for our ancestors, it wasn't a trade-off. It was survival. By giving kids a chance to take on responsibility early on, adults were actually handing them self-esteem. Those kids never had to go through a phase of feeling useless. They knew exactly what they were worth, and they understood perfectly that their existence was a vital, life-saving link in their community. Now, let's leave the Ice Age behind and head back to your messy living room. Looking back at this whole journey, we realize a profound truth. Kids weren't born to be locked away in a waiting room, completely disconnected from the real world. Their little brains are literally hardwired to be apprentices. They are constantly craving to add real value to their tribe. So, the next time your 3-year-old makes a total mess, spilling soap all over the floor because they insist on washing the dishes, or stubbornly demands to carry a heavy grocery bag, even though it's incredibly annoying and slows you down. Try to just smile, because that isn't them trying to destroy the house or just being stubborn. It's a powerful echo of their primal instinct. It's your kid using a language passed down through tens of thousands of years, looking you dead in the eye and saying, I am an important part of this family. Please let me help. So, what kind of chores does the little intern at your house love to hijack the most? Sweeping, doing the dishes, or helping fix the car? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so we can keep decoding more fascinating psychological mysteries together.